She's gonna pass it to me. Dan, I don't know why we have Dan here.
During the public hearing, I'll just speak up.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave the staff to come up and worry about the budget.
I told Kevin, I don't know, you have questions during the
So
public
you're
hearing.
gonna check that with
Yeah, sorry.
Larry was like, it's not failed, it's just a
Thank
release
you.
valve on it.
Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's not a dam, we
It's just
just
so
class
bright,
size again. We
right
tried
at your
to
eye
do
level too.
But the city didn't want it. I was like,
I
well, we didn't
forgot.
want
I
to fail
use
dam.
blue light
No,
glasses in
exactly.
here when I'm
So
not
they're not
having
gonna fix it,
and
they
I
don't
forgot
care.
mine.
They said it is what it is, and
So.
it's not gonna cause any major problems.
You gonna put your name tag there?
But people have noticed the water levels
Okay,
going
it's 7.
crazy.
Well, dear Board of Aldermen,
I'll wait for Ernie to sit and then we're ready to go.
You take mine, Drew.
I can leave Mel, and then you guys can speak together.
I'm gonna
Mike's
call
here.
a
I'm
special
open.
meeting
Oh,
of
he's
the
over
Board of
there.
Aldermen to order on Thursday, October 19th at 7 PM in the Aldermanic Chamber. Prayer will be offered by Clerk Extraordinaire Alderman O'Brien, and Alderman Dowd will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Thank you, Madam President. Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and the greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance.
Alderman O'Brien is present. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clay.
Here.
Alderman Moran. Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderwoman Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman Como.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Theobald. And our President, Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
You have 12 present.
Thank you. As is customary, I will turn the I'm sorry, also joining us this evening is Mayor Donchis and CFO John Griffin. I'm going to turn the meeting over to the Budget Chair, Alderman Dowd.
Okay, this evening, we're going to hear a public hearing on R-23-162 relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year 2024 escrows. So, we're, doesn't have any. Okay, so the first would be testimony in favor of R-23-162.
Well, Mr. Chair, I was
Yes.
going to talk through these items so people would be able to address them.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, yes.
And CFO Griffin here is here as well to answer any questions that come up if I cannot answer them. So you see we have a number of escrow items totaling $1,815,000. And I will take them one at a time. There are about 9. The first is a transfer or an allocation of surplus funds to the city buildings ETF, and that is in the amount of $500,000. But there is, within that transfer, allocations to specific purposes. Number one, $210,000 to the fire department for a facility study to estimate, to evaluate each of the fire stations and to attempt to determine what repairs or what needs to be done at each station to maintain their integrity. And we know, at least at Amherst Street, Station 1, there is a cracked floor. And then there's also a $200,000 allocation to the police department buildings, and that is for the purpose of designing any changes that are needed at the Riverside building. The Riverside building that was previously occupied by Public Works, but which is now going to become a police training facility. The current police training facility is in the Mill Yard. It's an old dilapidated building. This building is closer, right across the street from the police department, basically. And this would assess what needs to be done there just to bring it up to a condition that is suitable for the training facility and do the design work. And according to the proposal, Mr. Chair, there would be $90,000 to the city buildings ETF. This covers any unexpected repairs that are needed in any city buildings, City Hall, Court Street, other buildings. And I believe there's around $200,000 in that fund now, but Mr. Griffin can give you that specific figure. But, Mr. Chair, we wanted to ask for one change here, and that is that the $90,000, the $25,000 of the, there be an amendment, the $25,000 of the 90 be allocated instead to tree cutting. And you're going to hear about this in the committee meeting, but there are trees, especially in wards 6, 3, and 8, that are on city property and need to be, and threaten nearby residences because they are in bad shape, and Parks Department would like to cut those down. So we are suggesting an amendment that would not alter the bottom line of the escrows, but within that building fund would switch the $25,000 from the general building fund into tree cutting. The second item is, and the police department can speak more specifically to this with the committee, but this is a $70,000 item that is for the management of the police case, the criminal cases, the case file. They handle many criminal cases at the same time, and this will help them manage all of the criminal cases that they're handling. The third one is they need updated servers at the police department, so that is $30,000 to provide that technology. The fourth transfer would be is for $300,000 to the expendable trust fund, in other words, a savings account, for the dams. We are trying to relicense one of the dams, that being at Mine Falls Park, and various repairs are needed. Matt Sullivan can speak to that specifically during the committee meeting or answer questions now. The next figure is $200,000. That is the local match for the BAE CHIPS Act grant that BAE is seeking. A condition of their obtaining that grant is that there be a local match for training and things like that. Now, this is a massive grant, $35 million. They would match that. They, BAE, with also, I believe, tens of millions of dollars. They feel optimistic that they may be awarded the grant, but we still need the local match to be there so that if they are, we can carry it through. This would improve their chip-making facility and add some jobs as well. Next, we have a $75,000 item for continuing the rail planning. As you know, this has been discussed with the planning committee and I think others, but the Executive Council stopped the work for the final planning phase of the Capitol Corridor Rail Study. And this would be for the purpose of exploring with the MBTA the possibility of a Nashua first approach. In other words, a station in Nashua if the whole project were not going to be completed. The next item is $61,000 for FTA grant. This is the match for a transit project that will improve the technology of, I believe, the routing and everything for the buses. The next item is, has to do with a match. $79,000 is the match for capital projects. I think we're still looking to complete the match for the station out here, and Matt can give you all the details there. And finally, $500,000 to fund school district deferred maintenance. This is again a savings or reserve account that the school department can be used to make repairs when they need them. There's a figure of $1 billion worth of school buildings, and they need to have funds on reserve when things go awry, and they need to make repairs at any of the elementary schools, middle schools, or high schools. And Mr. President, or Mr. Chair, those are the escrow items that are proposed for a total of $1,815,000.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions from any of the board members before we get going on the public hearing on any one of these items? Okay, seeing none, we'll have another opportunity in the budget meeting. So, again, the public hearing, R23-162, relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year 2024 escrows. For the first item, I will call for testimony in favor. Seeing none. Testimony in opposition.
Good evening, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I have a couple questions. How many different escrow accounts do we have within our city budget that require us to move money in track? Does anyone know how many we have?
Is that relative to this?
Yes, because this is all about the movement of escrow money. And it's
Yeah,
being
well,
moved
specific
because we have these escrow accounts. And what I'm wondering is, how many different escrow accounts do we have? Do we know? And is it trackable? Is there a place in the budget or a financial place I can go and find these escrow accounts, specifically escrow accounts?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Mr.
may,
Griffin.
John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. These are brand-new escrows. Essentially what this is taking monies that were previously appropriated and move it into a new escrow for these purposes, and it can only be spent on these purposes. With regard to prior escrows that are carried over, those are on the monthly financial statements.
They're on the monthly. Have we done anything to reduce the number of those escrow funds, or do we, escrow accounts, separate accounts? Have we changed them, or do we still maintain quite a few of those escrow accounts?
Generally speaking, anything that is capital-related, project-related, where the project hasn't been completed, those are carried forward. With regard to coming out of the COVID pandemic, where we tried to provide funding on a continuing basis for the different operating divisions, we're going to eliminate several of those.
Okay. I'm opposed to spending this money and not returning it to the taxpayers for a number of reasons. I feel that the city has not been transparent with myself when I've requested information regarding finances. And the first one was the audit. I feel that the mayor lied to me. He did not respond to my right to know request, and he got to do that. That audit was not done.
Okay, again, this is getting off track from this public hearing.
I'm here to speak on why I don't support it. Anyone against it is supposed to come up. Now you're telling me I can't speak why I'm against it.
I'm just
All I
saying you
can
need to
say
be
is
more
I'm against it.
specific relative to the item on the agenda.
Okay, so I'm telling you why. I don't support any of these 9 items because I feel there's been no transparency in the city when it has come to spending money and accountability. I am still waiting for the final finances for the Art Center. We've been strung along for 10 months and we don't have the accounting on that. We keep being told they're waiting for another bill. We had the financial report from December of 2022, and it is now October of 2023, and we don't have accounting. I'm opposed to this spending because as a citizen, I can't track the money at all. It's not trackable, and it's not right. The audit, we violated RSA 21J:19, and that we didn't get it done for 12 months. And instead of just acknowledging we didn't get our work done to assure that our finances are managed correctly, we beat up on the citizen who points out that why did it take so long? And I don't feel we have the access to our financial office that citizens should have. You have to write and write and write to try and get information. Laura Calhoun wrote at least 15 emails to try and understand the loan. Why not have her come in and talk to her? This is why I'm opposed to you taking our money in escrow and using it for anything else except to give it back to us, because you haven't shown me you're responsible with our money. You love to kick me constantly for questioning it and call me out as a liar, but you do not put the facts on the table or open the doors or give the information, which is why you do have a whistleblower. People get frustrated.
Again, you're drifting off course here, so, Mr. Griffin, did you want to address any of that, or just let it go? All right, you're entitled to your opinion,
Of course.
but let's stick to the item that's on the agenda.
I'm concerned about the creation of new escrows and the existing escrows. A year ago, Rosemary Evans called me very upset about these escrow accounts. And I am concerned.
Now you're bringing personal names into this discussion.
I have every right. It's a city employee who called
You
me.
have every right to follow the rules of a public hearing, which is to talk on the subject at hand.
I am
Not bringing
speaking.
up other people's names on other matters that aren't directly addressed by this escrow account.
I think you're completely insane.
Well,
I have a right to address what Rosemary Evans is the comptroller, and she's got 23 years of finance experience. And when Miss Evans calls me and spends an hour on the phone talking about these accounts and expresses the concerns and her inability to do her job, I feel like I have the right to address it in a meeting about escrow accounts.
You have the right to state your opinion. This
So-
board will determine whether or not we pass this legislation.
Of course, I'm only giving my opinion.
All right?
You're gonna go
Given
make your
your
vote.
opinion,
So I don't want to see more escrow accounts added that become the burden in the finance office that have to be tracked when you haven't closed down and really cleaned up the escrow accounts that are running over there. According to her, they're out of control.
So at the budget hearing, we're going to be talking about each one of these, and I think that we'll see which ones, if not all of them, are critical to the running of the city of Nashua and aren't just a frill of spending money. So
It's not that I'm saying they're a frill of spending money. It's that nothing ever comes off the table. Nothing ever gets cleaned up in these escrow accounts. On the other ones, that was my concern. So I'm just expressing that you seem to create a lot of accounts, tuck a lot of money into it, instead of emptying the accounts yearly and coming in with a supplemental appropriation when you need extra money, you hold it and squirrel it away. I'm opposed to the squirreling away of money because the mayor lies to us about audits,
now
because
you're
the
drifting
financial
off.
office lies to us about our loans, and because the NPAC company has lied to us about our art center. I'm tired of that. Thank you.
anyone else in opposition? Seeing no one, testimony in favor? No one? Again, testimony in opposition? Seeing no one. I will now close the public hearing on R23-162 at 7:19 PM. Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that the October 19th, 2023 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned.
Motion on the floor is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:20 PM. We'll take just a couple minutes and we'll go right into budget. First item on the agenda is public comment relative to items being discussed at this budget meeting. Seeing no one, communications,
There is none?
unfinished business.
There is none.
First item is R 23-160 relative to transfer of $150,000 from Department 194 contingency account 7125 contingency cybersecurity into various accounts in Department 122 information technology and Department 191 education. You want to make a motion, Alderman Bryan?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend to the full board final passage of R 23-160. Discussion?
Now, I think we need to bring up the different departments to, just give you a little more detail on the items that I talked through during the public hearing, Mr. Chair.
That's not this,
That's not this one.
Oh, we're not on that one, I'm
on
sorry.
a different one.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
This is 160.
But Mr. Griffin does have something he'd like to address, given a public statement that was made yesterday.
Okay, Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, members of the board, John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. I actually have a handout for everyone that's here. Let us know if you don't have one, but Ms. Hannum is passing them out. So if I may, this is a communication to President Wilshire, members of the Board of Aldermen, CC to Mayor Jim Donchis, and it's from me and Rose Evans, Comptroller, dated today, October 19th. The purpose of this particular communication is to address the remarks made during public comment at the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. Please know that there have been no fraudulent activities or improprieties committed by the city, and the claim that the comptroller made such allegation to anyone is false. There were no financial errors or inaccuracies at the within the annual comprehensive financial report presented to the Finance Committee on Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. Any changes made to that document following the presentation were to correct formatting that was identified. In support of this particular communication, I think it's important that we wrote, Mr. Evans and I attached the representation letter provided to Markham LLP. This letter, signed by me and Ms. Evans, the comptroller, details the myriad of several representations that we have made. We would not have signed the document without knowing fully what those representations are. And I'd like to call out to help, in particular, items 3, 4, 15, 16, and 17 pertaining to fraud. That's a very powerful word, fraud. None of these representations indicate any knowledge of fraud on behalf of Ms. Evans and myself. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to present this particular information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion on this particular motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-23-162, relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year 2024 escrows. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Yes, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R-23-162. I think the first order of business would be to address an amendment to, as the mayor stated, to modify the $90,000 on line 1 to include, reduce that by $25,000 and allocate the $25,000 to Park Rec for tree clearing. Is there anyone that'd like to make that motion?
So, if Mr. Chair, the members of the committee want to hear more about the tree cutting that is necessary.
I was gonna get to that as soon as we,
Okay. all right.
somebody, as soon as it's on the table.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Somebody want to amend? Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, could I just see the sheet so I get it correctly? Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion. Where is it here? So I
Oh, no, it's to change the 90,000.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to change the $90,000 to include the tree cutting. Is that?
Right, it's 65 for the other city buildings and 25 for tree cutting.
Yeah, 65 for the other city buildings, 25,000 for the tree cutting,
Yes.
and so stated in the amendment.
And now that the amendment's on the floor, does anyone wish to hear from Park Rec on the particulars of the tree cutting?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So Brian Conant, Director of Parks, Superintendent of Parks, is on the Zoom if anybody wants to know the details.
Anyone want to hear the details? Yes,
Yeah, I'd like-
Alderman Karen?
I think we should know what areas of the city, and is this on private property, or is this our public trees that are causing some issues on private property?
Brian?
That's an excellent question, Alderman Karen. Good evening, everyone. Superintendent of Parks and Recreation, Brian Conant. These are 3 different tree locations that we don't have the equipment to get to. Cranes would be involved. One location is on Cameron, one's on the corner of Lund and Kingston, and another one is on Vicus. And to be honest with you, we currently have budgeted $10,000 in our budget for tree maintenance. We usually expend those funds tackling trees that we can't get to. We don't have a crane in our department. That's usually what we use this for. And those monies have been expended. So we have 3 different locations that I believe the residents do have a legitimate concern. It's on city property, to answer you, Alderman Karen, and they should come down. I'd be happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
welcome.
Alderman Cleve?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cronin, could you repeat the locations?
Yes, I can. It's Cameron Ave.
Okay.
It's the corner of Lund and Kingston in Vicus.
Vicus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm assuming, I guess what bothers me is, a couple of meetings ago, we were asked to transfer money from an escrow account to your department in order to replace the lights at Sargent Avenue. And it was represented to us that the lights were in danger of falling down, and it was
They are.
a critical situation. I'm
It is.
assuming these trees are in the same situation.
Yes,
pose a
Alderman Jettie,
hazard.
they are.
So my
They
question
are.
is, is it unreasonable for me to expect you to see these things ahead of time? And when you come to us during the budget season, like the lights at Sargent Avenue, I would think that their condition was discoverable at that point in time. And I don't know about these trees, whether that would have been discoverable. And I don't mean to, I guess I'm looking for your explanation as to why these needs were not seen, before the budget, and why they weren't, the appropriate money wasn't requested at budget time. And, so now we're dealing with an emergency transfer of funds. So
Now, I think,
want to give you
Mr.
an
Chair,
opportunity to explain that.
I can address that in part.
Yes, Mayor?
So, of course, we were trying to have a tight budget, and they did propose more money for tree cutting. And the mayor, in his infinite wisdom, cut the money. That's me. And
I was wondering if you knew the mayor.
cut it down to 10,000, and in an effort to save money, not knowing that, these problems would develop, in the hopes that we wouldn't have to spend as much as they had wanted. And the Board of Aldermen, I don't know if, I think the Budget Committee was told about that, but I'm not sure. In any event, the Budget Committee went along with the cuts that I had made and gave them the 10,000. But since we passed the budget back in June, I understand from Director Photo that, the residents nearby are calling and they're worried, and we may have made a mistake back, in June, not giving them more money. But what we did, apparently we did, and it's not really Mr. Conant's fault or responsibility. If it's anyone, it's me for trying to, get this part of the budget down.
All set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? So the motion on the floor is to amend as read by Alderman O'Brien. Change the amount to $65,000 for the buildings other than the tree, and the trees would be $25,000. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We now have the amended motion relative to our 23-162. So, are there any questions that anyone has on the items in the list that we would want to bring someone up from police, fire, school department? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I met with the fire chief. I'm square with that. As I go through here, I had a great conversation yesterday, actually. I was in Western New York for much of the week and had a great opportunity to talk to a gentleman who's on the rail committee, and I had questions about the study. So I'm pretty square with that. I do have a minor question on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The rail study that we got, Director Sullivan forwarded it to me a couple times. I lost it in my inbox, but he was kind enough to send it again. In the first phase, says 65,000. And then we're reappropriating 75,000. Just confused on what that is.
Director Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. The contract does read a little less than 75,000, but that doesn't take into account any type of contingency or any type of additional monies that may be necessary. So we built in a little contingency in case we needed something additional that was unforeseen.
Okay, great.
All set?
Yes, one more question?
Sure. Sullivan.
Thank you. To the fund school district deferred maintenance, $500,000. Are those monies that, since I sit on the joint special committee with you all, is that money that comes over to that committee and is spent, or how are those dollars allocated, tracked, held accountable to?
No, deferred maintenance is strictly under the control of Mr. Smith, and it's to take care of maintenance items in the 18 schools that we have, which is over $1 billion in infrastructure. And in the mayor's budget that we passed, there's only $100,000 allocated for that. And as Alderman Jettie can attest, 1 year it cost us $90,000 for one pump. Now the pump's as big as a Volkswagen bus, but it's a big pump. So there are things that come up that need to be covered, and at one point in my career as on the Board of Ed or Alderman, I forget what it was, we were looking at having $1 million in deferred maintenance, which if you did the math according to deferred maintenance allocations and any study you want to look at, we should probably be allocating far more than we are allocating. But this will allow him to do things that are critical to get done during the year. And no, it does not go to the joint special. It's strictly in the guise of Mr. Smith and his staff. Follow up?
What does $500,000 do for us? Does it, give me a progress bar, does it get it 50% there, 25% there? You know, if there's a punch list of things, I mean, how many things get ticked off the list with $500,000?
Sean, do you want to come up and?
Can I remind anybody who's got to testify, identify your name first so our transcribers can get it correct, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sean Smith. I'm the Plant Operations Director for the National School District. So the question concerning deferred maintenance. So all the items that go into our deferred maintenance request every year go to the Capital Improvement Committee, and they rank them pretty much as a whole. That's in addition to the capital projects. So generally, anything $1 million or less, I put in deferred maintenance, and then those that are in excess of $1 million will go through joint special process. It's a very fine line. It can waver back and forth. For example, if we were to repave the North High School, we're in excess of $1 million. That's something I'd probably try to suggest we go to joint special. So I'll give you some examples of what we accomplished this past year with the funds that we received. We're refurbishing the cooling tower at the North High School. It's 22 years old. It's about halfway through its life, and there are things that had to be done to correct those. We repaved the entire front entrance to Fairgrounds Elementary School. So that front bus drop-off loop, has been replaced. Franklin Street is relatively new to us, and we have a lease on the parking lot from the church, and that parking lot was in pretty sad shape, so we paved 2 of the parking lots that were assigned to us. We've replaced some boilers. We replenished, redid the kitchen at Franklin Street School. So those are the sorts of things that we've done. Those ran anywhere from $100,000 up to $300,000. So I'll give you a better picture of what we do.
Follow-up if I may.
Question?
But do you have a to-do list for that $500,000. That's really the.
I do.
Okay.
So it's part of, again, it's part of my annual capital improvement committee submission.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to them, it's a spreadsheet, I maintain it, I update it. Projects come on and off of it. My current balance of deferred maintenance projects is roughly $15 million.
15 million.
$15 million.
15.
So
Okay.
you can imagine if it's $100,000 a year, let's hire mathematics. It's gonna take a long time to get that done. And we're adding to it in the meantime. So by the time we get to the end of that list, we've got another list just as long.
Okay. Thank you for putting that in perspective. Appreciate it.
All set?
Yep.
Any other questions? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. So I have, I guess, some specific questions, not from Mr. Smith, but
Mr. Smith,
I know
sit
that.
down. Go ahead.
I know that Director Sullivan is here, I believe, and would be disappointed if he didn't have a chance to explain the request, but I'm interested in the transit monies. You know, are those projects that we need to provide matching funds, and if we don't provide the matching funds, we're going to lose out on something? You know, could you explain those?
Director Sullivan.
Good evening, Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. I would be disappointed if I didn't get a chance to explain this request this evening, so thank you for acknowledging my disappointment. You're absolutely correct, Alderman Jettie. These are projects that are primarily FTA funded at typically an 80% federal, 20% local match. So 80% of the total project cost is coming from the federal government, and we then need to mobilize the other 20%. There are two requests that are split out individually in front of you this evening. One is, of course, related to the transit technology project that the mayor spoke to. That is a comprehensive upgrade of all of our routing, geolocation, payment softwares that riders use when they're actually using the bus here in the city. So again, that specifically that $61,000 will be a portion of the match that will go to executing that project. Relative to the $79,000, there are actually, much like Mr. Smith, there are specific projects that we intend to execute within that $79,000, and those include, just to name a few, last evening at Finance Committee, I presented a 4-post lift to support the mechanics work on our buses. Again, we need to provide a match fund in order to purchase those lifts. We also need to buy a new awning for the Transit Administration Building. We need to do some new drainage work at the Transit Garage. We need some new garage doors. All of those things we have federal match or federal dollars for, but we need to provide local match to support our purchase and replacement of those things. So that's really what this $79,000 is going to within the request this evening. It's really just a matching of the federal monies.
Okay, can I
Follow up?
So similar to the question I asked the Parks Department, is this not something that you knew about during budget season and you just couldn't get the mayor to go along with? Is that why we're looking for it now?
No, that's a great question. The reality of our capital spending in the transit department is that it throttles up and down over time. In some years, we need to make significant capital expenditures and we need to have more match mobilized. In other years, we need less in the way of match monies. The way that the city's allocation works to the transit system is that it's about a $450,000 allocation on an annual basis. And it's been about that for the last 10 to 15 years. It's stable year over year. The reason that we don't bring these capital asks in as part of the annual operating budget process is that they would result in throttling up and down of that operating budget ask, that $450,000. And so what we've tried to do here is stabilize the annual ask when it comes to the operating expenses that go into the operating budget, that $450,000. But then with the capital monies, to seek alternative methods of securing match. One of which is the escrow process. We've done some other things in the past as well. But really, again, we want to stabilize the operating budget. That's why we don't introduce a lot of our capital expenditures into that annual operating budget process, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions, Alderman Jettie?
I have another question,
Go ahead.
if I could.
Is it for Mr.
So
Sullivan?
I don't know if CFO Griffin would be the person to answer this, but after we pay out this $1,815,000, I know that, let me start over. I understand that this money has become available to us because we spent less than what we had budgeted for the last fiscal year. And so we have this surplus of money. Most of it, I think, I can't remember, was it 6 million that we allocated towards reducing the tax rate? Is that the right number?
It was 8 million.
8 million. So we're going to use 8 million to reduce the tax rate. In essence, we're returning 8 million to the taxpayers that we had in surplus. And now this less than 2 million is going to be used for these projects. After we do that, does that spend all of the surplus we had, or do we still have surplus money that can be used for other things? Or, could you help me understand that part of it?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, great question, and it's something that I work on very diligently. When the mayor proposed the 8 million, I think Alderman Sullivan asked some very good questions, detailed. So I'm going to go by memory here because I want to talk to you directly. So we had $11 million of appropriations not spent. And as I mentioned to you, with a lot of the divisions having very good years on the revenue side, we had $10 million of revenue. So what we did was we took the 11 million that we identified, and we're taking $1.8 million from it. That leaves a sizable amount. And as I mentioned to the mayor, I saw that a few other savings accounts, if I will, benefits fund, I'd like to take $4 million at some point in the not-too-distant future, recommend a transfer from assigned fund balance. And I'd like to take the other $4 million and get a head start on fiscal '25 SURF spend. You recall last year, we took $3 million and put it in the escrow, and it kind of confused a bunch of folks. So working with the mayor, I thought it appropriate that let's get these escrows appropriated. Let's take the 8 million of what's left, split it up, 4 million, 4 million. And the 10 million really supports the 8 million given back. Because that's surplus revenue. You can't, surplus revenue is not eligible for an appropriation unless you reappropriate it through fund balance. But, so in summary, we're going to also end up with an unassigned fund balance of about 36 million, which, if you recall the calculation, you may not have been here, but in any event, it's 11.4% of our $317 million operating budget by ordinance. The ordinance is 10%, we're putting in 11.4. So then we're going to close the books, and there could be more surplus that we can either put in an unassigned fund balance or assigned fund balance. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to add some more detail.
Okay, thank you.
Jetty, all set?
Yep, thank you.
Alderman,
No.
you're in budget, so Alderman Sullivan?
Okay, thanks. To that point, and since Director Sullivan is still here, one question I did have, I did notice that our hydroelectric revenue, given all the rain we've had, it's way ahead of where it should be. Why do we need to, and maybe it's an accounting thing, but why do we need to take 300,000 from that surplus when that specific account, when it comes to revenue, is performing so well?
Mr. Griffin?
Let me help. We need to find appropriations not spent So in that particular case, we identified street department, there's no nexus there, so you're really reappropriating 300,000 of unspent appropriations into the fund. The revenue side, and we're fortunate, we actually, and we're regarded as an organization that is really conservative on revenue projections, so we don't get caught. The last thing you want to do is get caught short on revenue. And Director Sullivan, he's provided some color to that, either in the budget or prior, with regard to the uncertainty relative to the turbine coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, bottom line is we needed to find a one-for-one street department surplus into the hydro, not revenue from high electric. It doesn't work.
I see.
You can't spend revenue, you have to appropriate it.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you for
So
explaining.
the revenue from the hydro does not really go into the hydro fund, it just goes into the city's general fund. So
Right.
it doesn't it is not directed into the hydro projects. So it helps the revenue overall, but
Yes.
there's no money to spend in the hydro,
Okay.
in the hydro account.
So I shouldn't think of the hydroelectric department as kind of, if the revenue is there, then it just goes back into that department.
But it could
Pardon
be,
the pun,
you
it
could arrange it,
flows
you could do
into
it
the
that
general
way.
fund.
You could do it that way, separate it like in an enterprise fund or something. but
Right.
It's not that way now.
Yeah, okay, all right.
All set, Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you.
Alderman Clee?
I
Oh.
think Alderwoman Kelly has her
Alderwoman
hand.
Kelly?
Oh, thank you. We talked about just about every line item. You mentioned that the fire infrastructure, city buildings, and you mentioned about police, but I don't think we heard what the city building allocation was going to go to. That's the one we just
Yeah.
reduced by.
Director Cummings
25,000.
is racing to the podium.
Thank you, Director Cummings.
Again, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. We had some unforeseen expenses here in the building already, and particularly around HVAC and mechanicals. We have a very old system here, and we're doing the best that we can to try to keep it together. That's as well as we have some bathrooms here in the building that are in need of attention. We did some Band-Aid temporary work last year, hoping to do some more work again this year.
Thank you.
All set?
That's it.
Now Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, this is for Director Sullivan regarding the 61,000 for the transit technology project. My question was, is this similar to what we discussed, the GIS, so that riders would be able to know when the bus is coming, so that if it's running a little late or something, they would see it? We talked about this way, they didn't have to sit in weather as long, they could see whether or not it was on time. Is that what all this is?
Yes, Director Sullivan.
Yes, Alderwoman Clee, that's exactly what it is. Real-time bus location and the ability of a rider to have an arrival time and a bus location on their smartphone or other device that is a part of what we're looking at doing. To be clear, we have not awarded this contract yet, so we don't know exactly what the suite of offerings will be within the grant once awarded, but when we applied to FTA, that was one thing that was absolutely critical and paramount to moving forward with this. And so, yes, I mean, it's all, this work particularly is all to benefit really the users. It certainly does benefit our drivers and others as well, but it will change the experience of riding the bus when it comes to understanding how the system is operating and making it more accessible as well.
Follow up?
It's not so much a follow-up as much a comment. I had spoken to Director Sullivan prior to that, and I had a number of constituents who had asked actually for something very similar to this, so that they would be able to track when the bus is coming. Some were parents that were bringing their children, not necessarily young children, but to the bus station, felt like they were running late, and then saw that after she thought they had missed the bus was actually there. Was one situation, people that have to sit out in the rain, it allows them to track to see where the stops are and so on, because we don't have shelter for every stop. So it does help especially those that live right in that area. So I think it's going to go over very well with some of your writers and so on. So I do appreciate this, and I think it's a really good plan. Thank you.
All set? Any other
Yes, thank you.
questions? No? Okay. I just want to say, by the way, that the two items, the one for the fire department and the police department, are very critical. And they're small enough to get the job done, but not large enough to bond. So the deputy chief, assistant chief Atkinson and the chief and I rode around to the buildings in the fire department. They need some work. And we need an engineering analysis to determine the scope of that work and what can and can't be done and when. And as far as the police department moving into the building we gave them, they need to be able to do the things that are going to be covered by this money so that they can move to that building. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, we were voting on R 23-162 as amended.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. As new business ordinances,
There is none.
and I don't think we're taking up anything on the table. General discussion? No. Public comment? Seeing none. Remarks by Alderman? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Coming from the fire department, I would just like to thank the members of the Budget Committee for the support, particularly for the fire department buildings. Out of all the buildings that we own, the only one where we actually have people living in the structure, is the fire department buildings. So they do need a level of care. You know, they eat their, dinner and stuff like that. They just can't go walking around the neighborhood. So therefore, to me, one of the greatest loss, there's no medals that you get, not like building a wonderful building. But what a shame if we miss our opportunity of maintaining our current infrastructure. Because if we don't maintain the current infrastructure, to me, that's such a great loss and a waste of money to our taxpayers. So by approving this, I think we've done our due diligence for the taxpayers by maintaining on what we have. Thank you.
Any other aldermanic comments? Seeing none, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion on the floor is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:57.